Rome was not built in a day, but in its rise, it built the world we know today. Beneath the ruins of marble columns and the echoes of gladiators in the Colosseum lies the story of ambition, conquest, art, and faith. This is not just the story of a city, nor merely of a nation. It is the tale of an empire that defined civilization itself. From the thunder of Roman legions marching across continents to the quiet prayers whispered inside the Vatican, Rome has stood as a beacon, a conqueror, and a teacher. Today, we step into the eternal city and its nation, Italy, to unravel a past drenched in glory, a culture woven with passion, an economy that shaped the modern world, and a present that still carries the heartbeat of history. This is Rome. This is Italy history. Long before marble palaces adorned the seven hills, before emperors commanded armies and senators debated in the forum, the land of Italy was a canvas of tribes, myths, and gods. Around the 8th century BCE, a tale was whispered of twins Romulus and Remus abandoned by the river Tiber, nursed by a she-wolf and destined to shape destiny. Whether legend or memory, the myth carried a truth. Rome's birth was not ordinary, but divine. Archaeological findings reveal that settlements already thrived in the region, their fires flickering against the dark, their communities bound together by survival and ritual. The Etruscans, a mysterious people whose language remains undeciphered, left behind intricate tombs, bronze art, and architectural mastery that would one day inspire the Romans. To the south, Greek colonies dotted the Italian coast, bringing philosophy, trade, and the alphabet that would shape Latin. Rome was born in this crucible of influence, an infant civilization cradled by myth, nourished by neighbors, and poised to rise. The early Romans were not emperors, but survivors. Kings ruled them first, each one carving his mark in the clay of an emerging city. The final king, Tarquin the Proud, ruled with cruelty and arrogance, until the people revolted and vowed never again to bow before a monarch. In 509 BCE, Rome declared itself a republic, a daring experiment in governance, where power was divided among consuls, senators, and assemblies. This was no democracy as we know today. It was an oligarchy favoring the elite. Yet within this framework, Rome's citizens developed values that became its backbone. Mos Mirum, the customs of the ancestors, discipline, loyalty, honor, and duty to the state. These ideals hardened Rome's spirit and prepared it for the struggles ahead. What had begun as a fledgling city-state would soon transform into a machine of conquest, diplomacy, and law. The Republic was not just a system, it was the fire that forged Rome's identity. Rome's destiny lay not in isolation, but in expansion. First came wars with neighboring tribes, the Sabines, Latins, and Etruscans, where victory was often bought with resilience rather than strength. Then came the great rivalry with Carthage, the North African maritime power that controlled the Mediterranean trade routes. The Punic Wars, stretching over a century, became battles not only for territory but for supremacy of the known world. Hannibal, Carthage's greatest general, marched across the Alps with elephants, striking terror into Roman hearts. Yet Rome endured, adapting, bleeding, but never breaking. By the end of the Third Punic War, Carthage lay in ashes, its soil salted, its memory obliterated. Rome now commanded the Mediterranean, the Mare Nostrum, our sea. From Spain to Greece, from North Africa to Asia Minor, Rome's shadow stretched across continents. The Republic had transformed into an empire in all but name. But expansion bore its poison. With every province conquered, wealth flowed into Rome, gold, slaves, and luxury, but so did corruption, inequality, and unrest. Senators grew rich, while soldiers returning from war found their farms lost and their families broken. The gap between the ruling elite and the common citizen widened dangerously. Out of this turmoil rose figures whose names echo through history. The Gracchi brothers, who fought for land reforms and paid with their lives. Marius, the general who reformed the army, making soldiers loyal to commanders instead of the state. And Sulla, who marched on Rome itself, shattering the sanctity of the Republic. Rome was changing, its political fabric tearing apart, its destiny shifting from senate to sword. In this chaos emerged a man who would change everything: Julius Caesar. Brilliant, ambitious, and ruthless, Caesar conquered Gaul, crossing rivers and mountains to extend Rome's reach. But his victories abroad only sharpened rivalries at home. When the Senate demanded he surrender his command, Caesar chose defiance. Crossing the Rubicon River in 49 BCE with the immortal words, "The die is cast." Civil war engulfed Rome. Allies became enemies. Brothers turned against brothers, and blood ran through the streets of the Eternal City. By the time Caesar emerged victorious, the Republic was mortally wounded. His assassination on the Ides of March in 44 BCE, at the hands of his own senators, was not the restoration of liberty but the final breath of the Republic. The stage was now set for emperors. Rome's destiny was no longer in the hands of many, but in the grip of one. Out of the ashes of Caesar's assassination, Rome stood at a crossroads: chaos or transformation. His death was meant to save the Republic, but instead it unleashed new civil wars. Mark Antony, Caesar's trusted general, and Octavian, his adopted heir, clashed for control. The Mediterranean once again became a battlefield, and alliances were written in blood. At Actium in 31 BCE, the fate of Rome was sealed. Octavian's fleet triumphed over Antony and Cleopatra, ending not only a rivalry, but an era. With Antony dead and Egypt subdued, Octavian stood alone as master of Rome. In 27 BCE, he took the title Augustus, the first emperor of Rome. Though he cloaked his rule in republican traditions, power was now centralized. The Senate existed, but it was Augustus who commanded loyalty, armies, and destiny. A new age had dawned. The Roman Empire. Augustus understood that Rome needed more than conquest, it needed peace. For centuries, Romans had known little but war, expansion, and upheaval. Now, under his steady rule, came the Pax Romana, the Roman peace. For nearly 200 years, the empire enjoyed stability unprecedented in history. Roads stretched like veins across the empire, carrying not only soldiers but merchants, travelers, and ideas. Aqueducts brought water into cities, amphitheaters hosted grand spectacles, and Roman law began to knit together a diverse world of peoples and cultures. The empire became a mosaic. Egyptians, Gauls, Syrians, Britons, Jews, and countless others, all subjects of Rome, bound by its roads and governed by its legions. The Eternal City, adorned with marble temples and golden forums, stood as the beating heart of a world empire. Yet, Rome's grandeur was not without its shadows. Emperors followed Augustus, some wise and just, others cruel and despotic. Tiberius ruled with suspicion, Caligula with madness, Nero with fire and vanity. Still, the empire endured, its strength lying not only in its emperors, but in its institutions, its army, and its sheer adaptability. In 64 CE, when flames consumed much of Rome, Nero's name was forever stained by whispers that he played music while the city burned. In the midst of such calamities, a new faith was emerging: Christianity. Born in the eastern provinces under Roman occupation, it began as a persecuted sect, its followers executed, its gatherings hidden in catacombs. Yet persecution could not extinguish it. Instead, it grew quietly, steadily, preparing to reshape the very soul of Rome. As the empire reached its height under emperors like Trajan and Hadrian, Its borders stretched from the misty highlands of Britain to the deserts of Arabia, from the Rhine to the Nile. Rome commanded nearly a quarter of humanity. Its armies stationed on distant frontiers, its cities thriving with trade and culture. Trajan expanded Rome to its greatest territorial extent, while Hadrian consolidated, building walls to mark the empire's limits. The Colosseum roared with the cries of gladiators. The Circus Maximus thundered with chariot races and Roman architecture, soared with triumphal arches and domes that defied imagination. To live in Rome was to live in the center of the known world, a city of spectacle, power, and splendor. Yet, beneath the marble and glory, cracks were forming. Wealth was concentrated in the elite. The army's loyalty swayed with the promises of ambitious generals, and the seeds of division were quietly being sown. The empire's greatness was as much a burden as it was a triumph. Expansion had brought wealth, but it also brought borders that were increasingly difficult to defend. Germanic tribes pressed on the frontiers, Parthians threatened in the east, and internal rivalries consumed Rome's strength. When Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king, ruled in the 2nd century CE, he left behind not only meditations on virtue but warnings of fragility. His reign, marked by war and plague, foreshadowed the storms ahead. Rome had conquered the world, but could it conquer itself? The Republic had died in the arms of empire, and now the empire itself stood vulnerably. Golden Age, brilliant, but fleeting. The Eternal City's destiny was far from finished, and its most turbulent chapters were yet to come. By the 3rd century CE, the empire that once seemed invincible began to stagger under the weight of its own vastness. Rome had become too large, too unwieldy, its borders stretching beyond what even its legions could defend. Emperors rose and fell with dizzying speeds, sometimes murdered by their guards, sometimes replaced by ambitious generals. This was the crisis of the 3rd century, a time when Rome teetered on the edge of collapse. Barbarian invasions, plagues, economic turmoil, and civil wars tore at the empire like wolves at a wounded prey. Cities shrank, trade faltered, and the once glorious capital seemed distant from the provinces it claimed to rule. Yet even in this darkness, Rome's resilience shone. Leaders like Aurelian fought to restore order, rebuilding walls around the Eternal City and pushing back invaders. Rome was weakened, but not yet broken. It still had centuries of life to give. Amid this chaos, one figure would change Rome's course forever: Constantine. In 312 CE, on the eve of battle against his rival Maxentius, Constantine looked to the sky and saw a Vishnu cross of light, accompanied by the words, "In this sign, conquer." The next day, he marched under the banner of the Christian symbol and emerged victorious at the Battle of the Milvian Bridge. With that triumph, Christianity, once persecuted and outlawed, began its ascent from the shadows of catacombs to the throne of emperors. Constantine's Edict of Milan in 313 CE granted religious tolerance across the empire, and Christianity grew into a force that transcended borders, languages, and classes. In 330 CE, Constantine founded a new capital, Constantinople, the New Rome, shifting the empire's center of gravity eastward, toward the crossroads of Europe and Asia. The Eternal City remained sacred, but the empire's heart had begun to beat elsewhere. While Christianity united many, it also reshaped the soul of the empire. Pagan temples, once the pride of Roman religion, began to fade, while bishops and priests gained influence. By the late 4th century, under Emperor Theodosius I, Christianity was declared the empire's official faith. Rome, once the champion of many gods, had now embraced one. This transformation, while spiritual, also weakened old traditions. The unity that Roman law, military discipline, and shared rituals once provided now gave way to theological disputes, schisms, and struggles between church and state. Yet it also gave birth to something enduring. The Christian Church, centered in Rome, which would outlive the empire itself. The Western Empire, meanwhile, was crumbling under relentless pressure. Germanic tribes Visigoths, Vandals, Ostrogoths, pressed against its borders, sometimes as enemies, sometimes as migrants seeking refuge. In 410 CE, the unimaginable happened. Alaric and his Visigoths sacked Rome. For the first time in 8 centuries, the Eternal City fell to foreign hands. Though the empire survived, the shock reverberated across the known world if Rome could fall was anything truly eternal. In 455, the Vandals struck again, looting Rome and stripping it of treasures. Provinces were lost, one by one, Britain abandoned, Gaul fractured, North Africa taken. The empire was being carved apart, while in the east Constantinople flourished, protected by its massive walls and strategic position. The empire was no longer one. It was a tale of two Romes, one decaying in the west, one enduring in the east. Finally, in 476 CE, the curtain fell. A Germanic chieftain, Odoacer, deposed the boy emperor Romulus Augustulus, marking the official end of the Western Roman Empire. Rome, once the mistress of the world, was now a city of ruins, her marble broken, her streets haunted by the memories of legions and emperors. Yet even in death, Rome gave birth to legacies that could not be buried. Her language, Latin, lived on in law, literature, and the Romance languages of Europe. Her architecture inspired cathedrals and palaces for centuries. Her laws shaped justice, her roads guided trade, her spirit of empire lingered in kings and popes who sought to claim her mantle. Rome had fallen, but Rome had also become immortal, transcending time, reborn in every age that dared to call itself civilized. Culture. The soul of Italy has always been carried by its language. Latin, once the tongue of Roman legions and emperors, became the foundation upon which Europe would build its identity. Out of Latin's rigid grammar and eloquent prose grew the Romance. Languages: Italian, French, Spanish, Portuguese, and Romanian. Yet it was in Italy that Latin's transformation gave birth to a voice uniquely its own, Italian. By the Middle Ages, dialects flourished across the peninsula, from the melodic Neapolitan to the strong rhythms of Sicilian, each shaped by centuries of conquest and cultural exchange. But it was the Tuscan dialect, refined and immortalized by writers like Dante Alighieri, that emerged as the standard, the language of poetry, courts, and eventually the modern Italian nation. Dante's Divine Comedy was more than literature, it was a declaration that Italian could rival Latin itself in depth and beauty, giving the people of Italy a common tongue and a cultural identity that would endure. Italian literature became a mirror of its society, philosophical, artistic, and deeply human. Petrarch, with his sonnets, gave Europe a language of love and longing. Boccaccio, through the Decameron, captured the humor, tragedy, and resilience of ordinary people during the Black Death, blending satire with compassion. Centuries later, writers like Niccolò Machiavelli revealed the raw realities of politics in The Prince, a work still debated today in corridors of power. Italy's words were not confined to the page, they became ideas carried across borders, shaping the Renaissance and influencing the birth of modern thought. In these writings, Italy revealed itself not merely as a land of beauty, but as a land of inquiry, expression, and intellectual daring. Beyond words, Italy's culture has always been steeped in philosophy and the pursuit of wisdom. The ancient Romans had absorbed Greek philosophy, Stoicism, Epicureanism, and skepticism, adapting them into guides for civic duty and personal virtue. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor, wrote meditations that still speak to the human condition today. In the Renaissance, Italy reignited the flame of humanism, a movement that placed man, not gods or monarchs, at the center of thought. Thinkers like Pico della Mirandola proclaimed that humans had the power to shape their own destiny. while polymaths such as Leonardo da Vinci explored the universe with boundless curiosity, blending art with science. This cultural philosophy of questioning, of striving for beauty and knowledge, became Italy's gift to the world. Art, too, became the lifeblood of Italian culture. Ancient Rome had already set the stage with its mosaics, frescoes, and monumental sculptures, capturing gods, emperors, and victories in stone. But it was during the Renaissance that Italy became the beating heart of global art. From the delicate brush of Botticelli to the divine genius of Michelangelo and the visionary sketches of Leonardo, Italy's artists elevated human creativity to the level of the sacred. The Sistine Chapel's ceiling, the statues of David and Peta, the frescoes of Raphael's were not just works of art, but windows into the human spirit. Florence, Venice, and Rome became living museums, their streets echoing with the footsteps of patrons, artists, and dreamers who dared to immortalize beauty. Music also rose as a defining voice of Italian culture. Ancient Rome had filled its forums with chants, horns, and theatrical performances. But it was in later centuries that Italy carved its legacy into the soul of music itself. Gregorian chants echoed in monasteries, binding faith to sound. Then came opera, uniquely Italian creation that combined drama, music, and emotion into one art form. From the haunting arias of Verdi to the grandeur of Puccini, Italian opera became a universal language of passion and tragedy. Even instrumental music thrived, with Vivaldi's Four Seasons painting the cycles of nature in sound. Music in Italy was never backgrounded, was experience, a reflection of life's beauty and sorrow. In its language, literature, philosophy, art, and music, Italy gave humanity not only culture, but a lens through which to feel, to question, and to dream. If there is one aspect of Italian culture that has conquered the world as completely as the Roman legions once did, it is cuisine. Italian food is not merely sustenance, it is storytelling, history, and family woven together on a plate. Rooted in the simplicity of fresh ingredients and regional diversity, Italian cuisine reflects the land itself, the sun-kissed tomatoes of the south, the rich cheeses of the north, the olives and wines that thrive in fertile hills. Pasta, now a global staple, varies endlessly: spaghetti in Naples, tagliatelle in Bologna, orecchiette in Puglia. Pizza, born in Naples, has become a universal symbol of comfort. Yet in Italy, it retains its soul. Thin crust, fresh mozzarella, fragrant basil, kissed by wood-fired ovens. Meals are not rushed affairs, they are rituals. To dine in Italy is to gather, to celebrate, to pause and savor life itself. Wine, too, is more than drink, it is memory bottled. The rolling vineyards of Tuscany, Piedmont, and Sicily have produced wines that are poetry in liquid form, each glass carrying the taste of soil, sun, and centuries of tradition. From Chianti to Barolo, from Prosecco to Marsala, Italian wines embody the diversity of its landscapes and the artistry of its people. In ancient Rome, wine was sacred, offered to gods and enjoyed in feasts that blurred the line between celebration and decadence. Today, while vineyards modernize, the ritual of wine remains central, paired with food, shared with family, lifted in toasts that echo with laughter. To Italians, wine is not an accessory to life, it is part of life. Festivals in Italy are not just events on a calendar. They are living expressions of history and faith. Carnival, with its elaborate masks and colorful parades, transforms Venice into a stage of mystery and wonder, echoing centuries of tradition. Siena's Peleo, a fierce horse race through the city's medieval square, is more than sportet, is civic pride, rivalry, and pageantry. Religious celebrations mark the rhythm of the year, from Easter processions to the Feast of San Gennaro in Naples, blending devotion with spectacle. In every corner of the country, saints, harvests, and histories are honored with music, food, and parades, binding communities together through shared memory and joy. These festivals are not relics, they are living testaments to the Italian spirit, resilient, passionate, and celebratory. Traditions run deep in everyday Italian life, often centered on family, community, and ritual. The family table remains the cornerstone, where generations gather to share meals and stories. Sundays are often marked by long lunches, grandmothers preparing recipes passed down through centuries. Children absorbing not only flavors, but heritage. Coffee culture reflects another daily ritual: espresso, taken quickly at a bar. Cappuccino reserved for mornings, never after lunch. Small details reveal large truths. In Italy, life is not meant to be hurried, but savored. Even greetings carry warmth, with kisses on the cheek, gestures of the hand, and conversations that flow as naturally as the Tiber River. These traditions are threads woven into the national fabric, giving Italians a shared rhythm of life. The essence of Italian culture lies in its ability to balance tradition with modernity. Ancient rituals and medieval festivals coexist with contemporary fashion, cinema, and art. The piazza, the town square, remains a vital institution, where life unfolds in conversations, markets, and gatherings, just as it did in Roman forums centuries ago. Even in the face of globalization, Italy preserves its cultural heartbeat, not as nostalgia, but as living identity. From the clink of glasses at a family dinner to the grandeur of carnival masks, from the aroma of fresh espresso to the sound of church bells echoing through narrow alleys, Italian culture is immersive. It is not something one observes from afar, it is something one feels, breathes, and carries within. Nowhere is Italy's cultural imprint more visible than in its architecture. From the ancient ruins of Rome to the Renaissance masterpieces of Florence, Italy is an open-air museum where stone and marble tell the story of humanity itself. The Colosseum still stands as a monument to Roman engineering, its arches and vaults inspiring stadiums across the world. The Pantheon, with its perfect dome and oculus, remains one of the most copied buildings in history, influencing cathedrals, capitals, and courthouses centuries later. Medieval Italy left behind towering castles and cathedrals, such as the Duomo of Milan and the Leaning Marvel of Pisa. But it was during the Renaissance that Italian architecture reached sublime heights. Brunelleschi's dome in Florence, St. Peter's Basilica in Rome, and Palladio's villas in Veneto became eternal symbols of balance, harmony, and grandeur. Every city, from Venice with its palazzos to Siena with its Gothic spires, breathes history through its stones. Alongside its architecture, Italy also gave the world the language of style through fashion. For centuries, Italians have viewed clothing not simply as necessity, but as expression, a reflection of artistry, elegance, and individuality. During the Renaissance, Italian courts dazzled Europe with fabrics of silk and velvet, often dyed in colors so rich they were reserved for nobility. In modern times, Italy has become synonymous with haute couture and luxury craftsmanship. Milan, Florence, and Rome serve as global fashion capitals, home to iconic houses like Gucci, Prada, Versace, Armani, and Valentino. Italian fashion is not about extravagance alone, it is about sprezzatura, an effortless elegance, a way of wearing beauty as second nature. Whether through finely tailored suits, flowing gowns, or leatherwork perfected in Tuscany, Italy continues to define the aesthetics of elegance for the modern world. Cinema, too, has carried Italy's cultural heartbeat across the globe. The golden age of Italian cinema in the mid-20th century gave rise to neorealism, a movement that captured the struggles and humanity of post-war life. Directors like Roberto Rossellini, Vittorio De Sica, and Luchino Visconti crafted films that were raw, poetic, and deeply human. Bicycle Thieves, with its haunting simplicity, remains a masterpiece of global cinema. Later, Federico Fellini blended surrealism with vivid storytelling in films like La Dolce Vita and 8½, redefining the boundaries of art on screen. Italian cinema also brought us icons like Sophia Loren, Marcello Mastroianni, and Ennio Morricone, whose musical scores carried emotion as powerfully as images. Even today, Italy continues to influence global film, balancing art house beauty with contemporary storytelling. Beyond fashion and cinema, Italy's cultural influence radiates in countless ways. It is seen in designs like cars from Ferrari, Maserati, and Lamborghini that merge speed with artistry, furniture and architecture that combine tradition with modern minimalism, culinary innovations that remain rooted in authenticity. Italian craftsmanship has always valued quality over mass production, artistry over haste. This philosophy, whether expressed in a hand-stitched leather shoe, a perfectly balanced wine glass, or a Vespa scooter, has given Italy a unique cultural aura. The Italian way of life, often captured in the phrase la dolce vita, the sweet life, is admired globally, a celebration of beauty, passion, and living in the moment at its heart. Italy's cultural legacy lies in its universality. Few nations have influenced the world's daily life as profoundly. Our languages carry Latin roots. Our cities echo Roman planning. Our clothes follow Italian trends. Our films and music owe debts to Italian pioneers, and our meals often end with espresso or pasta. Italy's cultural gift is not frozen in the past. It is alive, evolving, and shared across continents. From Rome's ruins to Milan's runways, from Verdi's opera to Fellini's films, Italy has always stood at the intersection of history and imagination. Its culture reminds us that civilization is not only about power or wealth, it is about creativity, beauty, and the ability to make life meaningful. And in that, Italy remains eternal. Economy. The economy of Rome was built first upon the soil. Long before marble temples rose over the Forum, the strength of Rome lay in its farms, its fertile fields nurtured by the Tiber and the Mediterranean climate. Agriculture was not merely an occupation, it was the foundation of Roman identity. Roman citizens believed that farming instilled discipline, virtue, and loyalty, qualities that defined the Republic's earliest generations. Wheat, barley, olives, and grapes dominated the landscape, sustaining both the people and their armies. Small farmers worked their plots with devotion, producing enough to feed families and supply markets. Yet, as Rome expanded, its economy shifted. Vast estates, called latifundia, spread across conquered lands, worked by slaves captured in war. The humble family farm gave way to commercial agriculture on a massive scale. This transformation fed the empire, but also deepened social divisions, enriching the elite while displacing common citizens, setting the stage for unrest that would later shake the Republic. Beyond the fields, Rome thrived on its mastery of trade. The Mediterranean Mare Nostrum, our sea, became the empire's lifeline. Grain from Egypt filled the bellies of Rome's citizens. Olive oil from Hispania lit its lamps. Wine from Gaul and Greece poured into amphorae, stacked in Roman markets. Rome's roads, stretching thousands of miles, carried goods across continents. From silk and spices brought through eastern trade routes to raw materials mined in conquered lands. Carthage had once rivaled Rome for control of this commerce. But after its destruction, Rome ruled undisputed. Its harbors bustling with ships, its ports filled with wealth from every corner of the empire. This vast network of exchange created prosperity, but also dependency, especially on the grain of Egypt, which became the empire's breadbasket. The flow of goods bound Rome together, but it also made the empire vulnerable to disruption and unrest. Industry and craftsmanship also fueled Rome's economic might. Roman mines extracted gold from Spain, silver from the Balkans, iron from Gaul, and marble from Greece. Slaves and free workers toiled in quarries and foundries, producing materials that built aqueducts, roads, and monuments that still stand. Today, Workshops in Roman cities churned out pottery, glassware, and textiles, supplying not only domestic markets but international trade. Roman engineering itself was an economic force. The aqueducts and roads not only served the military, but allowed commerce to flourish with efficiency unmatched in the ancient world. In this way, Rome's economy was not static, it was dynamic, constantly innovating, expanding, and reshaping itself to meet the needs of an empire that spanned continents. But prosperity carried hidden costs. Rome's reliance on slaves for labor created a system where wealth was concentrated in the hands of the few. Enormous estates overshadowed small farms, leaving citizens displaced and cities crowded with the poor. Bread and circuses, free grain, and grand entertainments were offered to appease the restless masses. But these were symptoms of deeper economic imbalance. Inflation plagued the empire as coins were debased to pay for endless wars. Corruption seeped into tax collection, enriching officials while draining the provinces. As the empire aged, maintaining such vast economic machinery became increasingly difficult, and the costs of defense, bureaucracy, and luxury grew unsustainable. Rome had built the world's greatest economy, but it had also sown the seeds of fragility within its wealth. Still, Rome's economic legacy endured long after its political fall. The Roman road network, designed for armies, remained highways of commerce for centuries. Roman law standardized contracts and trade, influencing modern systems of commerce and property. Cities founded as military colonies grew into economic hubs that thrived well into the Middle Ages. Even the collapse of the Western Empire could not erase the imprint of Roman trade and agriculture, which laid the foundations of Europe's medieval economy. Italy, centuries later, would rise again as a hub of commerce during the Renaissance, but its strength in trade, craftsmanship, and innovation had roots deep in Rome's past. The story of Rome's economy is not just one of wealth and collapse, it is a tale of continuity, where the achievements of an ancient empire still echo in the markets, farms, and cities of modern Italy. When the Western Roman Empire fell in the 5th century, Italy's economy fragmented, but it did not vanish. The peninsula became a patchwork of kingdoms, duchies, and city-states, each shaping its destiny. The collapse of centralized Roman authority led to centuries of struggle. Yet Italy's geography, its fertile valleys, harbors, and position at the crossroads of the Mediterranean ensured it remained vital to commerce. During the Middle Ages, Italian cities such as Venice, Genoa, Pisa, and Amalfi grew into maritime republics, turning the sea into their empire. They controlled trade routes between Europe, the Middle East, and Asia, importing silk, spices, and precious goods that dazzled European markets. In their hands, commerce became power, and ships flying their banners dominated Mediterranean waters. The Roman Empire was gone, but in its place rose city-states whose wealth rivaled kingdoms. Venice, La Serenissima, became the jewel of this mercantile era. Built on islands rising from the Adriatic, it turned geography into destiny. Its fleets sailed as far as Constantinople, Alexandria, and the Black Sea, making Venice a gatekeeper between East and West. Genoa, its great rival, commanded trade in the Western Mediterranean, its merchants spreading influence into Spain, France, and North Africa. Pisa and Amalfi, though eventually eclipsed, were equally important in the early centuries, pioneering naval commerce. These maritime republics did not only carry goods, they carried culture, knowledge, and ideas, transmitting the mathematics of the Arabs, the medicine of the Greeks, and the philosophies preserved by Byzantium. Their economic power gave them political clout, enabling them to negotiate treaties, wage wars, and carve colonies abroad. Italy's fragmented states had no single empire, but together they created a network of wealth and influence unmatched in medieval Europe. The rise of banking transformed Italy's economy in ways as profound as Rome's roads once had. In Florence, Powerful families, like the Medici, turned finance into art. Perfecting double-entry bookkeeping, letters of credit, and international banking systems. Merchants no longer needed to carry gold across dangerous roads. Instead, they carried documents recognized across Europe. The Medici, through their banks, not only funded commerce but also influenced politics, placing popes on thrones and kings in their debt. Banking turned Florence into a financial capital, while cities like Siena and Venice also thrived as centers of finance. This revolution in money allowed trade to expand beyond borders, fueling the prosperity of Italy's merchant classes. More than wealth, it gave birth to patronage and economic system that invested riches into art, science, and architecture. Seeding the Renaissance. The Renaissance was not only a cultural rebirth, but an economic phenomenon. Italy's wealth from trade and banking poured into the commissioning of artists, architects, and scholars. Florence became a workshop of genius because its merchants and bankers invested in beauty as much as profit. Venice's wealth filled palaces along the Grand Canal decorated by Titian and Tintoretto. Rome, revitalized by papal patronage, adorned itself with Michelangelo's frescoes and Raphael's masterpieces. Art was not charity, was investment, a symbol of prestige, a declaration of power. Meanwhile, universities in Bologna, Padua, and Naples trained generations of scholars, lawyers, and doctors supported by economic stability. Italy's economy during the Renaissance was a fusion of commerce and creativity, where money fueled not only trade but imagination, making the peninsula the epicenter of Europe's rebirth. Yet Italy's wealth also invited envy and conflict. The peninsula became a battlefield for foreign powers Spain, France, and later Austria, all eager to control its riches. The discovery of the New World shifted trade routes away from the Mediterranean to the Atlantic, reducing the dominance of Venice and Genoa. Still, Italy's banking, artistry, and craftsmanship remained influential. Even as political fragmentation weakened the peninsula, its cities continued to thrive as centers of luxury goods, silks, glassware, and fine instruments. By the 17th and 18th centuries, Italy was no longer the dominant trading power it once had been, but its legacy endured in Europe's financial systems, its art-filled palaces, and its reputation for craftsmanship. Italy had passed the torch of empires centuries earlier, but through commerce and culture, it remained a heartbeat of Europe's economy. The unification of Italy in 1861 marked not only a political transformation, but also an economic awakening. For centuries, the peninsula had been fragmented into kingdoms, duchies, and city-states, each with its own economic priorities. Unification brought the challenge of knitting together the wealthy, industrial north with the largely agrarian south. Turin, Milan, and Genoa became the industrial triangle, developing factories, railways, and heavy industries. In contrast, the south, known as the Mezzogiorno, remained dominated by agriculture, plagued by poverty, and burdened by the legacy of feudal systems. This stark north-south divide shaped Italy's economy for generations, creating tensions that remain visible today. Still, by the late 19th and early 20th centuries, Italy began catching up with Europe's industrial powers, producing textiles, steel, and machinery while exporting labor to the Americas as millions of Italians sought opportunities abroad. World War II devastated Italy's economy, leaving its cities in ruins and its industries crippled. Yet from the ashes of war rose what historians call the Italian economic miracle. Between the 1950s and 1970s, Italy transformed into one of the world's fastest-growing economies. With help from the Marshall Plan and fueled by entrepreneurial spirit, cities like Milan and Turin became global centers of manufacturing and design. Fiat automobiles rolled off assembly lines, symbolizing mobility and modernity. Fashion houses in Milan, leather workshops in Florence, and luxury artisans across the country turned Made in Italy into a mark of excellence. Tourism exploded as well, with millions drawn to Rome's ruins, Venice's canals, and Florence's Renaissance treasures. Italy's economy was not just rebuilding it, was reinventing itself as a hub of innovation, style, and culture. Agriculture, though less dominant than in ancient times, remained a vital pillar of the Italian economy. The country's diverse geography allowed for some of the world's most iconic produce: olives pressed into golden oil, grapes transformed into Chianti and Barolo wines, and wheat fields supplying the pasta that became synonymous with Italian cuisine. The South, though poorer, remained essential for agricultural output: citrus groves in Sicily, tomato fields in Campania, and olive orchards in Puglia, feeding both Italy and international markets. Italian agriculture blended tradition with modern efficiency, preserving centuries-old methods while integrating technology. The result was not just food, but culture. Every bottle of wine, every wheel of Parmigiano cheese carried with it centuries of heritage. Linking the economy to Italy's soul. Tourism became Italy's golden industry, one that merged culture with commerce. By the late 20th century, the country welcomed millions of travelers each year. Drawn to its unique combination of history, art, landscapes, and cuisine, Rome offered the Colosseum and Vatican, Venice, gondolas and carnival, Florence, Michelangelo, and Dante, Naples, Vesuvius, and Pompeii. Beyond the famous cities, the Amalfi Coast, Tuscany's rolling hills, and the lakes of Lombardy became global icons. Tourism fueled hotels, restaurants, transportation, and crafts, sustaining local economies across the peninsula. Italy became not just a destination, but a dream, the embodiment of beauty, history, and romance. Today, tourism contributes nearly 13% of Italy's GDP, making it one of the nation's most resilient and important sectors in the modern era. Italy remains the 8th largest economy in the world, a member of the G7, the European Union, and the Eurozone. Its industries are diverse: automobiles like Ferrari, Maserati, and Fiat; luxury fashion giants like Gucci, Prada, and Versace; advanced machinery and aerospace engineering; and world-class cuisine and wine exports. Yet challenges remain. The North continues to outpace the South. Unemployment, especially youth unemployment, remains stubbornly high, and public debt has long been a concern. The global financial crisis of 2008 and the COVID-19 pandemic both hit Italy hard, exposing vulnerabilities. Still, resilience is woven into the nation's fabric. With creativity, tradition, and adaptability, Italy continues to shape the world's imagination, not only as a land of beauty, but as an economic player with centuries of experience in survival and reinvention. Current situation: in the heart of the Mediterranean, modern Italy is a country of beauty and contradiction. It stands as one of the world's great democracies, with a rich constitution born from the ashes of fascism after World War II. Yet, Italian politics is famously turbulent, marked by frequent government changes, shifting alliances, and a deep mistrust of political elites. Since the establishment of the Italian Republic in 1946, the country has witnessed dozens of prime ministers, each struggling to steer the nation through economic uncertainty, corruption scandals, and the demands of an increasingly globalized world. Italians themselves often joke that while their governments collapse, their country endures by its culture, resilience, and everyday life that thrives regardless of political turmoil. Italy's political system is a parliamentary republic, where the president serves as head of state while real power lies with the prime minister and parliament. Yet consensus is difficult to achieve in a land with such diverse regions, ideologies, and interests. Northern Italy leans toward pro-business policies, while the South demands greater social support. Rome, the capital, often becomes a battleground where these competing voices clash. Coalition governments are the norm, with parties forming fragile alliances that rarely last long. This constant instability has shaped Italy's global image in economic and cultural powerhouse, yet politically fragile, like a mosaic that holds together despite its cracks. For Italians, however, political chaos has almost become part of the national identity, an enduring drama that unfolds year after year. Corruption and organized crime remain persistent challenges for Italy's governance. The mafia, though weakened, in recent decades still exerts influence in regions like Sicily, Calabria, and Campania through its various branches, the Cosa Nostra, 'Ndrangheta, and Camorra. Their shadowy networks infiltrate businesses, politics, and even construction projects, eroding trust in institutions. Meanwhile, scandals involving politicians from bribery to misuse of funds have left citizens cynical about promises of reform. Yet, at the same time, Italy has shown remarkable resilience. Brave judges, journalists, and citizens have stood against corruption, sometimes at great personal cost. Their fight reflects the eternal struggle between Italy's darker realities and its brighter aspirations as a member of the European Union. Italy plays a crucial role in shaping the future of Europe, but this role is not without tension. The EU provides Italy with stability, funding, and access to a vast market, yet many Italians remain skeptical of Brussels' influence. Debates over immigration, economic austerity, and sovereignty have fueled the rise of populist parties that challenge the traditional order. In recent years, Italy has become a frontline state in Europe's migration crisis, with thousands of refugees and migrants arriving across the Mediterranean. This humanitarian challenge has tested Italy's resources and strained its political discourse, turning immigration into one of the country's most divisive issues. Despite the turbulence, Italy remains a vital actor on the world stage. It is a founding member of NATO, the EU, and the G7, and plays a central role in Mediterranean diplomacy. Its voice carries weight in debates on climate change, trade, and global security. At home, citizens continue to demand a government that can provide stability, opportunity, and transparency, while the future of Italian politics remains uncertain. One truth endures: Italy's democracy, though messy and fragile, has survived dictatorship, war, and crisis. Like the Colosseum, weathered yet standing, Italy's political system reflects both its flaws and its resilience, a living drama that continues to shape not only the country but the future of Europe itself. Modern Italy stands at a crossroads where tradition and transformation collide. On one side, the country holds fiercely to its cultural heritage, the family bonds, regional traditions, and rituals that have defined Italian life for centuries. On the other, globalization, technology, and migration are reshaping the fabric of society. Italy has one of the world's lowest birth rates, a demographic crisis that threatens its future. Young Italians often delay marriage and children, citing economic uncertainty and limited opportunities. Villages once filled with the laughter of children now echo with silence, as schools close and the elderly outnumber the young. This demographic imbalance is not only a social issue, but a looming economic and cultural challenge, one that questions how Italy will preserve its vitality in the decades ahead. Migration has become one of the most defining and divisive aspects of Italy's modern reality. Each year, boats filled with migrants and refugees cross the Mediterranean, fleeing war, poverty, and instability in Africa and the Middle East. Italy, due to its geography, often becomes their first entry point into Europe. The images are haunting. Overcrowded vessels arriving on Lampedusa's shores, families seeking safety, and rescue workers struggling against the odds. While many Italians have shown compassion, offering food, shelter, and solidarity, others see migration as a burden that strains resources and reshapes national identity. Politicians exploit these fears, turning the plight of migrants into a battleground for votes. The result is a society pulled between humanitarian duty and national anxiety. Reflecting the tension between Italy's heart and its politics, young Italians face a different struggle: the fight for opportunity. Italy has one of the highest youth unemployment rates in Europe, forcing many to seek futures abroad. The so-called brain drain, the exodus of skilled, educated young people, is a wound that continues to bleed talent from the country. Universities produce brilliant minds, yet Italy often fails to offer them pathways to success. This creates a paradox: a nation that gave the world Leonardo da Vinci, Galileo, and Enrico Fermi now loses its brightest stars to foreign shores. The frustration of youth is palpable, but so too is their determination. From startups in Milan to grassroots activism in Naples, young Italians are fighting to reshape their society, demanding innovation, fairness, and a future worthy of their potential. Italian society is also undergoing profound cultural change. The influence of Catholicism, once unquestioned, is now contested in a more secular and diverse population. Women, long underrepresented in politics and the workforce, are increasingly demanding equality and visibility. LGBTQ+ communities, once marginalized, are finding louder voices in cities like Rome, Bologna, and Turin. The arts continue to serve as both a mirror and a catalyst for change. Italian cinema, fashion, and music reflect a society wrestling with identity in the modern world. Yet, beneath these shifts lies a deeper question: how can Italy reconcile its reverence for tradition with the need to adapt to global realities? The answer is still unfolding, in classrooms, in streets, and in the choices of a new generation. Through all these challenges, one constant defines Italy's resilience. For centuries, this land has endured invasions, plagues, wars, and crises. Yet it has always risen, reinvented, and endured. Today's Italy may face demographic decline, migration tensions, and political instability, but it also holds extraordinary potential. The creativity of its youth, the strength of its communities, and the enduring power of its culture remain its greatest resources. Italy's future is uncertain, but it is also unwritten, a canvas awaiting the strokes of a new generation. And if history has taught us anything, it is that Italy, like Rome before it, has an unmatched ability to survive, adapt, and continue to shape the destiny of Europe and the world. Italy today is not just a country, it is a global presence. From the design studios of Milan to the fashion runways of Paris, from Rome's diplomatic halls to the vineyards of Tuscany, Italy exerts a soft power that is impossible to ignore. It is a founding member of the European Union, NATO, and the United Nations, giving it a permanent seat at the world's most important tables. Italian peacekeepers serve across the globe. Its cultural exports inspire billions, and its voice helps shape international debates on trade, migration, and security. Yet this influence is tempered by domestic struggles, political instability, and economic stagnation often prevent Italy from realizing its full potential. Still, when Italy speaks, the world listens, for this is a country that carries not just history, but a civilization's weight on its shoulders. Economically, Italy remains a paradox of wealth and fragility. It is the world's 9th largest economy, home to some of the most iconic brands in fashion, design, and automotive engineering. Names like Ferrari, Gucci, and Armani resonate globally as symbols of excellence. Its agricultural exports wine, olive oil, pasta are staples in homes worldwide, shaping the way humanity eats and lives. Yet beneath this glitter lies a system strained by bureaucracy, debt, and inequality. The North thrives with high-tech industries and global finance, while the South still struggles with unemployment and underdevelopment. Italy's economy survives on resilience and creativity, but its greatest challenge remains reform. How to modernize its structures without losing the traditions that give its products and culture such unique value. Environmental challenges now shape Italy's destiny as much as politics and economics. The Mediterranean climate that once nurtured Rome's empire is now under threat from rising seas, droughts, and extreme weather fueled by climate change. Venice, one of the world's treasures, faces a future where flooding is no longer occasional but constant, threatening its survival. Wildfires scorch the south during scorching summers, while glaciers retreat in the Alps. Agriculture, the lifeblood of Italian cuisine, struggles against shifting weather patterns, risking the vineyards of Chianti and the olive groves of Puglia. Italy stands at the front line of Europe's climate battle, forced to protect both its heritage and its future against forces far beyond its control. Despite these challenges, Italy has also become a leader in the green revolution. From renewable energy investments in solar and wind, to sustainable farming practices, to technological innovation in eco-friendly design, Italians are reimagining the balance between tradition and sustainability. Cities like Milan host world expos dedicated to food and sustainability, while Venice experiments with engineering marvels like the MOSE project to protect against rising tides. Italians have always been inventors, masters at taking crisis and transforming it into opportunity. In a century defined by climate struggle, Italy's creativity could once again provide solutions that inspire the world. So where does Italy go from here? The answer is uncertain, yet filled with possibility. Demographics, politics, and climate pose challenges that could weaken the nation. But history reminds us that Italy thrives on resilience. From the ruins of the Roman Empire to the devastation of World War II, this land has always risen again, reinventing itself while never abandoning its heritage. Today, its future depends on whether it can bridge its divisions, empower its youth, and embrace innovation without losing its soul. Italy's story is far from over. In fact, it may just be entering its next great chapter, a chapter where the echoes of the Colosseum, the Renaissance, and the resistance against fascism all converge to remind us that Italy is not merely a country. It is a civilization still in motion, a timeless force shaping the destiny of humanity. Italy is not just a country, it is a living masterpiece. It's a story of empires and revolutions, of art and resilience, of people who shape the world and continue to inspire it. Its past echoes in every stone, its spirit lives in every heartbeat, and its future is still being written. This is Italy, eternal, timeless, unforgettable.